All right, get this. You sent us a whole stack of documents on Avanti Feeds Limited, like meeting minutes, financials. There's even an auditor's report in here.
Wow, looks like we're really diving deep into Indian aquaculture and high finance today, huh?
Ready to see what we can uncover.
Absolutely. Looks like the key document here is this one from Avanti Feeds Limited.
Okay?
Yeah, and it's addressed to both the Bombay Stock Exchange and the National Stock Exchange of India. It's dated November 14th, 2024,
Okay.
and it outlines the outcomes of, well, a recent board meeting.
Interesting. So the meeting ran from 2:00 p.m. to 4:02 m. India Standard Time,
Uh-huh.
2 hours and 20 minutes. What happened in there?
Well, before we get into the nitty-gritty, it might be helpful to just understand that Avanti Feeds Limited is, well, they're an Indian multinational company,
Okay.
and they specialize in shrimp feed and processed shrimp,
Okay.
and they're publicly traded, which is why this document exists. It's a regulatory filing, to make sure everything's transparent for investors, the public.
Got it. So this isn't just some, like, internal memo.
Right.
This is serious business.
Exactly.
Okay. Let's dive into the specifics then. So it looks like Avanti's sharing their unaudited financial results for the quarter and also the half year ending September 30th, 2024.
Yep, that's right.
Okay.
And for the quarter, their standalone unaudited financial results, well, the revenue from operations is a whopping RS 1,007,947.43 lakhs.
Whoa. Okay, that's a pretty substantial figure.
Yeah. And then their net profit for the same period is RS 10,646.20 lakhs.
Okay, those are some big numbers. But what do they actually tell us about Avanti's financial health? Are these numbers good, bad, or just meh?
Well, on the surface, it looks pretty positive. I mean, they're clearly generating significant revenue and turning a healthy profit, right?
Yeah.
But to really get a sense of their financial health, we need to, look deeper, analyze trends, compare these figures to previous periods, industry benchmarks, all that.
So it's not just about the absolute numbers themselves, it's about the bigger picture.
Right, exactly.
Okay. What about that independent auditor's report you mentioned? What role does that play in all of this?
Oh, that's crucial. Even though these are unaudited results, the report from, let me see, Tokaram Co LLP Chartered Accountants,
Okay.
it adds this layer of, credibility, assurance for investors, showing that the numbers have been scrutinized by an external party.
Okay, makes sense. Like having a second set of eyes to make sure everything is legit.
Yeah, exactly.
They also provided both standalone and consolidated financial statements, right?
That's right.
What's the distinction there? Why provide both?
So the standalone statements just focus on Avanti Feeds Limited itself.
Okay.
But the consolidated statements, they take into account all the financials of its subsidiaries and associates.
Oh, got it.
So it gives you a much more complete picture of their, overall operations.
Okay, so the consolidated statements are like the full-fledged family portrait, while the standalone is just Avanti on its own. But it looks like there might be a change in those family dynamics coming up. There's a Mr. Yungyat Sethawat. Oh, yeah?
Joining the board.
Oh, that's interesting, yeah. And the document says that shareholders will be voting on his appointment via postal ballot, which, suggests that this isn't just your typical routine addition to the board.
Yeah, his name definitely stands out. What implications might his appointment have for Avanti? Especially considering, well, his name kind of suggests he might be from outside India.
Yeah, it's tough to say for sure at this point, but it could point to, Avanti maybe looking at international expansion or maybe exploring some strategic partnerships abroad.
Interesting.
Bringing someone on board with experience in different markets could be a big move for them.
Yeah, for sure. It's like they're adding a new piece to the puzzle. We'll have to see how it all fits in with their overall strategy. Okay, now this next part is where things get really interesting for me. A member of the promoter group is shifting to the public category. Can you break that down for us? What is a promoter group, and why does this shift even matter? Right. So in Indian companies, the promoter group usually consists of the founders or, those with significant control over the company.
Yep.
They're basically the key decision makers. So any changes within this group can often signal a shift in the ownership structure or maybe even like the power dynamics within the company.
So this isn't just someone changing their LinkedIn profile.
Right.
This is a significant move.
Yeah.
Who's making this shift, and what does it mean for Avanti?
So the certified extract of the meeting minutes names Mr. Vijaya Kumar Chikapalli.
Okay.
And get this, the document states that he currently holds 0 shares directly in Avanti.
0 shares.
Yeah.
So if he doesn't own any part of the company directly, why is his move from the promoter group such a big deal?
Well, it's not always just about direct shareholding, right? It's about influence, connections. Mr. Chikopali might still have some sway in other ways, but this reclassification kind of suggests a deliberate step back from, that core decision-making process. And the board approved this move based on his declaration of non-involvement in the company's management and control. But
Hmm.
the underlying reasons for this move, they aren't exactly clear just yet.
Interesting. So we've got strong financials, a new international sounding board member, and a shift in the power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Are these events connected? Are we seeing Avanti setting the stage for something big? Or are we just reading too much into this?
Oh, it's so tempting to connect the dots, but
Yeah.
correlation doesn't equal causation, right? We need more information, maybe some future company announcements, to really paint a clearer picture.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we've got some intriguing pieces of the puzzle, but we need more information to see how they all fit together. But before we move on to the industry landscape and competitive forces, let's delve a bit deeper into those financial statements.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking beyond just the top level figures, there are even more insights we can glean about Avanti's performance by digging into some specific areas, like, the revenue streams, their profitability, and all that.
Okay, sounds good. Let's break it down. What are some of the key takeaways we can extract from these statements? What should we be paying attention to?
Well, the first thing that kind of jumps out at me is the breakdown of their revenue by segment.
Okay.
Because Avanti isn't just a shrimp feed company.
Right.
They're involved in processed shrimp, power generation. They even have a shrimp hatchery.
Wow, so they have quite a few different irons in the fire.
Yeah, they do.
Does this revenue breakdown give us any insight into, which of these segments are actually driving their success?
Oh, absolutely. Their consolidated, unaudited segment information shows that, yeah, the shrimp feed segment is their primary revenue driver.
Okay.
For the quarter ending September 30th, 2024, it generated, let me see, RS, 1,007,519.76 lakhs in revenue.
Wow. So the shrimp feed business is clearly their, bread and butter.
Yeah, you could say that.
What about the other segments? Are they bringing in any significant revenue as
Yeah.
well?
The processed shrimp segment is actually doing pretty well too.
Yeah.
Bringing in Rs 27,576.56 lakhs in revenue for that same quarter.
Okay.
But, compared to those two powerhouses, the power and shrimp hatchery segments, they generate significantly less.
Interesting. It seems like Avanti Feeds is primarily a shrimp feed company with a substantial processed shrimp business happening on the side. And then the power and hatchery segments, while interesting, are, relatively minor players in their overall picture.
Yeah, that's a good observation. It really does align with, their core expertise and their position in the market.
Right.
But, it's important to remember that even smaller segments, they can be strategically important, for the company's long-term growth, their diversification strategy, things like that.
Right. We shouldn't dismiss those segments entirely. Now, I'm curious about their profitability. They reported a healthy net profit, but what about their profit margins? Are they making a good return on their sales?
That's the key question, right? And to really understand that, we need to look at those profit margins for each segment. So for instance, for the quarter, the shrimp feed segment, they reported a profit of Rs 10,687.26 lakhs.
Okay.
And the processed shrimp segment earned Rs 1,473.50 lakhs.
Okay, so both segments are profitable.
Yeah.
That's a good sign. But what about those margins you mentioned? Can we get a sense of how those two segments compare in terms of which one is more profitable?
Well, to get the exact margin, we'd need to do a deeper analysis.
Yeah.
But just looking at these figures, it does seem like the shrimp feed segment is more profitable than processed shrimp.
Interesting. I guess I might have assumed that processed shrimp, being a more value-added product, would have higher margins.
Yeah, I can see why you'd think that. But, there are a lot of different factors that can influence profitability.
Right.
Like input costs, competition, pricing strategies. A deeper dive into Avanti's operations and also the market dynamics would give us a clearer picture of, what's driving those margin differences.
All right, so to have more detective work for us later. But it's fascinating to see how these financial statements really offer, glimpse into the inner workings of the company.
Oh, for sure. And we're just scratching the surface here. We could uncover even more insights by, analyzing their balance sheet, their cash flow statement, and other financial disclosures they've provided.
Well, you've certainly given us plenty to think about already.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears and explore that cash flow statement in more detail. It's time to follow the money trail.
I'm with you.
All right, so we just explored Avanti's income statement, got into their revenue breakdown. Now it's time to dive into the cash flow statement.
Okay.
What can this tell us about their financial health?
Well, the cash flow statement is super insightful
Okay.
because it really reveals how a company is, generating and using its cash.
Okay.
It's like, think of it as a financial roadmap,
Yeah.
showing how the money's flowing in and out.
Okay, I'm ready to follow that money trail.
Yeah.
But how do we even approach a cash flow statement? It seems kind of complex at first glance.
Yeah, it can be, but it's not as daunting as it looks, I promise.
Okay.
Usually it's broken down into three main sections. Cash flow from operating activities, then cash flow from investing activities,
Okay.
and then finally cash flow from financing activities.
So it's basically categorizing the cash flow based on its source, or like where it's going.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Okay, let's start with cash flow from operating activities then.
Right.
What insights can we get from that section?
So this section, it focuses on the cash that's generated from the company's core business operations.
Okay.
Things like cash coming in from sales and then cash going out for like expenses,
Uh-huh.
like raw materials, salaries, and other operational costs.
So essentially, it's all about those day-to-day money-making activities, right?
Exactly, yeah.
What does Avanti's cash flow from operating activities look like? Are they, generating enough cash to keep the lights on?
Well, looking at their consolidated, unaudited statement of cash flows, it seems like Avanti generated Rs 34,207.15 lakhs in cash from operating activities for those 6 months ending September 30, 2024.
Okay, so that's a decent amount, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it means their core business is actually generating positive cash flow,
Exactly.
which is a good sign.
Yeah, for their overall financial health.
Okay, good. Now, what about the next section? Cash flow from investing activities.
Right. So this section, it basically tracks the cash flows related to the company's investments,
Okay.
in assets like property, plant, and equipment, or even investments in other companies.
Okay.
It also includes any proceeds from the sale of those assets, too.
So this section is showing us how Avanti's investing for future growth and expansion.
Exactly.
What does their investment activity look like?
Well, based on the statement, it looks like they used Rs 4,019.41 lakhs in cash for investing activities during that same 6-month period.
Okay, so they spent more cash than they actually brought in from investing activities.
Yeah.
Is that a cause for concern?
Not always, no, because
Okay.
companies will often invest quite heavily in their growth,
Right.
and that can lead to negative cash flow in this particular section.
Okay.
The key is to, really look at the types of investments they're making and consider whether they have the potential for like strong future returns.
That makes sense. So it's not just about the raw numbers, but understanding the strategy behind those investments.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the last section, cash flow from financing activities.
Okay, so this section covers the cash flows that are tied to, well, the company's financing,
Right.
like debt they might have, equity, and also dividends. It basically shows how Avanti's raising capital and also how they're managing those financial obligations.
So essentially how they're funding their operations and growth.
Exactly.
Okay. What kind of insights can we get from looking at this section?
Let's see. So their statement shows that they used Rs 9,196.58 lakhs in cash for their financing activities, again during that same period.
Okay.
This probably includes things like dividend payments that they're making to shareholders and, maybe some debt repayments too.
So they're rewarding their shareholders with dividends, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But they're also using cash for these financing activities, which, I mean, it could indicate they're taking on more debt or maybe issuing more equity, right?
That's a really good point. And that's exactly why it's so important to not just look at the cash flow statement in isolation. You really need to look at it together with those other financial statements.
Okay.
Because that way you get that, holistic view of how Avanti is managing all their resources
Yeah.
and making those strategic decisions about their investments, their financing, how they're handling those dividends.
Like putting together this big financial puzzle.
It is.
So what's the overall takeaway from Avanti's cash flow statement? What's the big picture here?
Well, the main takeaway for me is that their core operations, they are generating that positive cash flow.
Okay, good.
But at the same time, they're also investing in growth, and then they're also utilizing cash for their financing activities.
Right.
So this kind of suggests that they're in a phase of expansion, and they're actively, managing their capital structure to support those growth initiatives.
So it paints a picture of a company that's on the move, but
Yeah.
they're also, strategically balancing that growth with financial stability.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. And don't forget, we have both standalone and consolidated cash flow
Oh,
statements.
that's right. Can you just remind us again why they provide both and what the key difference is?
Oh, sure. So the standalone statement, that's just focusing on Avanti Feeds Limited's cash flows, just them.
Okay.
But then the consolidated statement includes the cash flows of all their subsidiaries and associates.
Hmm.
So this gives us that really comprehensive view of, their overall cash flow situation.
Got it. So the consolidated statement is giving us that zoomed out big picture view, including the impact of, all those different moving parts within their operations.
Yes, exactly. And you can even compare those two statements, and that can sometimes give you even more valuable insights into how the cash is flowing within, those different parts of the company
Okay.
and how it all ultimately consolidates at that group level.
All right. So we've really dissected their financial statements, uncovered some of these, intriguing developments in the boardroom, followed them, put all of this information into a broader context.
Okay.
So how does Avanti Feeds actually fit within the global aquaculture industry? What are those competitive forces that are at play, and what are the potential risks and opportunities they're facing?
That is a very important question to ask.
Yeah.
Because to really get a good understanding of Avanti's, their position, their potential,
Right.
we really need to consider that broader industry landscape and those global trends that are shaping aquaculture as a whole.
Okay. Sounds like we're casting our nets wider.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the world of aquaculture and explore where Avanti Feeds fits within this dynamic industry. Okay, so we've looked at Avanti's financials, those board meeting decisions.
Right.
Now let's kind of zoom out a bit
Okay.
and think about the bigger picture. Where does Avanti Feeds fit within, the global aquaculture industry?
Well, that's a key question.
Yeah.
Aquaculture, basically fish farming, is growing really fast worldwide.
Okay.
It's becoming a more and more important food source,
Right.
especially as the demand for seafood keeps rising and there's more pressure on wild fish stocks.
Yeah, for sure. So it's a booming industry. Seems like there's a lot of potential for growth.
Yeah, definitely.
What role does India play in all of this?
India is actually one of the world's top aquaculture producers,
Okay.
especially for shrimp,
Okay.
which, puts Avanti Feeds in a pretty good spot,
Right.
given that they're so focused on shrimp feed and processed shrimp.
Yeah, that makes sense. But even booming industries have their, challenges, right?
Hmm.
What are some of the hurdles that aquaculture companies like Avanti need to kind of navigate?
Oh, absolutely. Sustainability is a big one.
Okay.
Consumers are way more aware now about things like overfishing, pollution, even, the use of antibiotics in aquaculture.
Right.
They want to know that their seafood is, well, ethically and sustainably sourced.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like Avanti needs to be really proactive in showing that they're committed to, sustainability and
Oh, yeah.
responsible practices.
Absolutely. Transparency is huge these days.
Right.
They need to be really upfront about their, eco-friendly practices, how they're sourcing their products, and any certifications they have.
Yeah, okay. What else?
Another big factor is just the speed of, technological advancements in aquaculture.
Oh, right.
There are always new innovations coming out.
Right.
Like feed formulations, disease management, farming techniques. It's constantly changing.
So for Avanti to, stay competitive, they have to stay ahead of the curve when it comes to technology.
Yeah, exactly. Investing in R&D, to create better, more sustainable products, that's going to be key.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else?
Well, we can't forget about competition.
Right.
The industry is becoming more and more globalized with companies from all over the world, fighting for that market share.
Okay.
So Avanti has to find ways to really stand out and maintain their edge.
Right, and that kind of brings us back to Mr. Youngyut Satoiwat, that new board member with the very interesting name.
Right.
His international connections, if he has them,
Yeah.
could be really valuable as Avanti tries to, navigate this very competitive landscape.
For sure. His appointment could definitely suggest that they're thinking about, expanding globally
Okay.
or maybe forming partnerships to, get into those new markets.
Yeah. It's like this strategic chess game, right?
Yeah.
Every move they make has these implications for their, overall competitive position.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. And then there's, Mr. Chakapali stepping down from the promoter group.
Right.
Could that be connected to all of this too? Maybe it's a response to, those industry pressures we were talking about, or maybe they're trying to, like, bring in some fresh leadership with new ideas.
This is another piece of the puzzle for sure. We'll just
Huh.
have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah. And it's important to not jump to conclusions too quickly.
Right, of course.
We need more information to really understand why he made that decision.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. I mean, we analyzed Avanti's financials. We talked about those boardroom decisions. We even explored, those global industry trends.
It's been quite a journey.
It has.
But it really shows how, all those different parts of a business, they're all connected.
Yeah.
The financials, the leadership, the decisions they make, it's all influenced by, what's happening in the industry and around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good reminder that, businesses are constantly changing and adapting to all of that.
Exactly.
Okay, so for our listeners out there, what would you say is the key takeaway from all of this? Let's say you're an investor. Would all of this make you more or less likely to, buy Avanti Feeds stock?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And there's no easy answer. You really have to consider everything we've talked about.
Right.
I mean, they have strong financials, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're making smart moves, to position themselves for future growth.
Okay.
But, you can't forget about those potential risks and challenges either.
Right. So it sounds like Avanti Feeds is definitely a company to watch.
I think so, yeah.
We'll have to see how it all plays out and, keep an eye on their progress.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Of course. It's been fun.
It has been. Until next time.